You know that person who stays quiet? Not the one who has nothing to say. Not the one who is disengaged or checked out. The one who is fully present, fully thinking, fully feeling, and still says almost nothing. The one who sits in a room full of noise and chooses silence the way other people choose words, deliberately, consistently. That person isn't shy. They're not passive, and they're definitely not empty. There's something far more considered happening beneath that quiet than the world gives them credit for. If you're someone who stays quiet, or if you've always wondered what's really happening inside the people who do, welcome. Today, we're getting into the psychology of people who stay quiet. The ones society calls reserved, mysterious, difficult to read. But science calls something else entirely. Staying quiet isn't the absence of something. It isn't a deficit. The consistent choice of silence is almost always the outward sign of an unusually rich and active interior life. One that processes the world more deeply than average. One that observes more than it performs. When someone is quiet in a group, the assumption is almost universal. They don't have much going on inside. But quiet people aren't observing from a distance. They're in it completely. While others are processing out loud, using conversation as a way to think, quiet people are processing inward, taking everything in, turning it over, weighing it, sitting with it before they decide what, if anything, it becomes. That's not absence. That's a different kind of presence. Dr. Elaine Aron's work on highly sensitive people keeps returning to one consistent finding. A significant portion of the population processes sensory and emotional information more deeply and thoroughly than the rest. They notice more, they feel more of what they notice, and they need more time to work through what they've taken in. For these people, silence isn't disengagement, it's integration. The quiet is where the processing happens, and interrupting it to perform engagement isn't participation. It's a betrayal of the quality that makes their contribution worth waiting for. Quiet isn't always about depth of processing. Sometimes it's about something learned, something earned. Some people are quiet because they learned that speaking up came at a cost. Maybe they grew up in an environment where their voice was consistently talked over, where being heard required a kind of volume and confidence they didn't yet have. So they learned to internalize instead. Or maybe they spoke once, honestly and openly, and the words were used against them. The nervous system, which is always taking notes, quietly noted the cost of openness and adjusted accordingly. You don't become quiet overnight. You become quiet after enough experiences of what loud costs. The silence is not passive. It is one of the most active states a person can inhabit. While the quiet person appears still, their interior is running at a speed and complexity that the people talking rarely match. They are listening to what is said and what isn't. They are reading the room, not just the content of what's spoken, but the emotions underneath it, the dynamics between people. They are forming responses that they may never give, because by the time they've fully shaped a thought, the conversation has moved on. They are noticing things that will only be mentioned later, in a quieter moment, with the one person who seems ready to hear them. The people who listen most deeply retain more, understand more, and respond with significantly more accuracy and insight. Volume of speech is not a measure of quality of thought. Quiet people have always known this. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that quiet people carry that nobody ever talks about. The exhaustion of being in a world that treats silence as a problem to be solved. Where personality is measured in decibels. Where quiet people are asked, "Why are you so quiet?" That question doesn't just ask for an explanation. It delivers a verdict. It says, your default mode of being is wrong. And quiet people hear it constantly. They have heard it their whole lives. Most of them have spent years carrying a low-level belief that something about them is fundamentally lacking. They are not lacking. They are different. And the difference is not a deficit. Susan Cain's work on introversion changed how an entire generation understood quiet. The world had been built for extroverts, all of it optimized for one way of being, and quietly, systematically disadvantaging another. Quiet people have been navigating this mismatch their entire lives, performing a version of themselves that is louder, quicker, more verbally present, not because it's authentic, but because the alternative is to be overlooked. That performance is exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to people who don't have to do it. Their words, when they come, mean something, not because quiet people are universally wise, but because they don't speak until they have something worth saying. They don't fill space with sound. They don't reach for words before the thought is ready. When they finally speak, it's because something has finished forming inside them, and it's ready to be shared. The quiet ones in a room are often the ones whose words, offered carefully and sparingly, cut through everything else. The ones who, after a long silence, say the thing that everyone else was circling but couldn't reach. Because that's what real communication does. It creates silence in others. And the people who understand this best are the ones who have been living in it all along. Quiet people are, almost universally, the safer keepers of what's real, because they listen without agenda, because they don't rush to fill the silence with their own story the moment you pause. They hold what you tell them carefully, the way you hold something fragile, aware of its weight, aware of what it cost you to hand it over. Quiet people make rare friends, the kind whose presence doesn't require performance, the kind who make you feel you don't have to be anything other than what you are. That quality, the ability to be with someone without needing to fill the space, is increasingly rare. Quiet people are not behind the times. They are ahead of them. Your quiet is not a flaw. It is not a phase. It is not something to work through or grow out of. It is the shape of a mind that moves inward before it moves outward, that listens before it speaks, that waits until the thought is ready rather than sending it out half-formed into the world, that has learned, whether by nature or by experience, that silence has a texture and a weight, and a kind of honesty that words alone cannot always carry. The world needs quiet people, not to balance out the loud ones, but because the qualities that come with genuine quietness make understanding possible. In a world that has confused speed with intelligence and volume with truth, you are not less because you are quiet. You are not absent because you are still. You are someone who understands that some of the most important things ever communicated between people were communicated in the pause between words. And honestly, the fact that you're here, sitting quietly with this, means you already know that. If this felt like someone finally gave voice to something that's been living in your silence, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.